Hello and welcome to another Franchise Hockey Manager stream. My name is Adam. I'm the community manager of Franchise Hockey. With me, as always, and not pictured on your screen, is FHM producer Jeff. Say hi, Jeff.
Hey, everybody.
And we are starting a brand new stream with Jeff. We're going back to your childhood, and we are rewriting history of the Montreal Canadiens 1909 season.
Yes, my childhood. So what we're going to do here is replay the entire, or at least try to replay the entire Canadiens history, so from, well, at least 1909 to 1920, or 2023. So 114 years is going to be a little different. We haven't tried something like this before. We're obviously going to be moving very quickly through the games, but we'll try to give you some of the history and explain, the background to the seasons as we go through them, what actually happened with the franchise in those years. So obviously this is with FHM 10, we've added the National Hockey Association. Previously you'd only start in 1917 with the NHL. We've gone one league back with that and gone back to 1909 in the NHA. So just to explain, I think I've gone into this a little bit before on other streams, but for anybody who's starting new, this is sort of the predecessor to the National Hockey League. And you can see it's kind of an odd collection of teams in places you wouldn't really, expect major professional sports teams to be located. For example, you've got, Cobalt and Haleybury. This, the little red star up at the top of the map there. You can see where, Ottawa is there, Montreal is there, but why do we have teams in these little mining towns up in northern Ontario? And Renfrew, which is sort of a farm town about halfway up from Ottawa to the northern teams.
Okay, I'm going to point of order here. This is not really northern Ontario. This is just...
Yeah, it's north of Sudbury. I'd say that counts as northern Ontario.
Barely.
Yeah,
in the scheme of... It's just way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's up on the Quebec border on Lake Temiskaming. It's at the time there's, well, that would sort of gets into the explanation of this. What happens is the Eastern Canadian Hockey Association is sort of the preeminent league in pro hockey at that point, but they decide the Montreal Wanderers are part of that league. But the Wanderers decide they want to sort of downsize their arena to one they think will be a little cheaper for them to play in. So they make that move. The other teams aren't happy about that because the way revenue's working on in those days is the visiting team gets I'm not sure if it was a 50-50 split or just a significant part of it, but playing in the smaller arena meant that they would get less money. So the other ECHA teams got together and essentially booted Montreal out, or at least the Wanderers. The Montreal Shamrocks were still in the league. So they kick out the Wanderers, and around the same time, this man, Ambrose O'Brien, who looks remarkably like a young Al Capone, his father, MJ O'Brien, owns several mining operations up in these northern Ontario towns. There was a silver rush in 1905, so they're raking in money, but you've got basically two towns full of miners, so it's young, mainly single men. You've got to give them something to do, otherwise there's going to be riots every night. So they decide, okay, let's start up a hockey league for these guys to watch. That is something called the Federal League. It's sort of a mid-level amateur league. It goes on for a few years, and they've got teams in Cobalt, teams in Haleybury, and other teams in that area. But what Ambrose O'Brien really wants to do, he had played varsity hockey at the University of Toronto and really wanted to be part of the top league. So he went to this ECHA meeting too, where the Wanderers are getting booted out, and tried to convince them to let his teams into the league. So ideally Renfrew, the Creamery Kings, which is sort of in this farm town a little ways up from Ottawa, and then these two northern mining town teams, Cobalt and Haleybury. And he basically gets told, no way, we don't want these little bush league teams in our league. So what he does is bumps into Jimmy Gardner. Who that is? That's the Wanderers player manager. In those days, in most cases, the team would be coached and managed by somebody by one of the players. And Gardner says to him, well, they don't want us, so why don't we start our own league? We've got your three teams. We've got the Wanderers. It's maybe not enough for Holy, so let's see what we can do about getting. Why don't we set up a French Canadian team in Montreal too? It's a natural rival for us, and that seems like a good idea. So that leads to these guys. They get Jack Laviolette, who'd been a player for the Shamrocks, and say, "Hey, Jack, why don't you organize this team? We'll let you run it." And so they set up the Montreal Canadiens. The problem is, it's they've got the name. You can see obviously this picture from that year. Club de Hockey Canadien is there's already a Canadian athletic club in Montreal, which was primarily promoting wrestling and boxing, run by a guy named George Kennedy. Real name's George Kendall. For some reason, he went by Kennedy.
Is that why fighting became important in hockey?
It was important long before that. But Kennedy had actually tried to get into the ECHA a year before and was turned away as well. But they didn't involve him in this new team, so he was really annoyed when he opens up his paper one morning in November 1909 and sees that there's this new hockey club calling itself the Canadiens, when he is the general manager of the Canadian Athletic Club. And it seems awfully sketchy that they've basically stolen his name. And he winds up threatening to sue. So over the whole course of this first season, this backroom stuff is playing out. Eventually, what winds up happening is Ambrose O'Brien, whose dad had basically been running, providing the money to run the Canadiens. They finally reached an agreement with Kennedy to sell the team to him, and from that point on, they are officially, really the Canadian Athletic Club team. So this first year we're playing, they're kind of the bootleg Canadians. They're not really the official Canadian Athletic Club of Montreal team. So we got
AJ Dula says so. Canadians are spelled like that because of legality.
Nope, just I think Canadian Athletic Club. Not even sure if they use the E spelling. No, it's spelled that way deliberately because this was supposed to be the French Canadian team.
Yeah,
and you can see from the names of the players in the first roster. Getting back to our game here, you can see most of the guys on the team: Laviolette, Poulin, Leduc, Casaguin. Pretty much everybody is French Canadian. Joe Katarinich is actually he's sort of their backup or third string goalie here. But he winds up eventually owning the team, and he's sort of a figure in the background in management this whole time. So it's the only time I've actually got him just nominally because I couldn't have the O'Briens running all the teams. He's set up as the owner this year. So our owner is also the third string goalie. So if he...
Interesting.
Yeah, not a situation you see that often. But, it's obviously... pretty much all French Canadian players, and just to keep to that for the first, I'm going to set a house rule for us in this game. The only players I'm going to acquire have to be either French or somebody who was born in Quebec.
Which is something Montreal actually kind of.
Yeah, I mean that's. Yeah, I don't know how long we'll stick with that, but just to keep the flavor of the team correct, I'm not going to grab a bunch of free agents who are, from Western Canada or wherever else, who the Canadians probably wouldn't have taken in real life. But just to give you a quick look through what we're up against, because this team was bad in the first year. I think they finished 2-10. It was only a 12-game season. I did make one mistake here. If you start a game, you'll notice that Newsy Lalonde is not on the Canadiens. He should have been. That's a data error on my part. I had him starting with Renfrew, and it turned out it was the other way around. He started with Montreal this year, and then they sold him to Renfrew. So I've fixed that, and that'll be fixed in the next update we do, not the one that was most recently out, because I just noticed it over the weekend. Or not over the weekend, it was a couple of days ago. But after we had that update done, so I've edited him over to us where he should start, and that it gives us a 5-star player off the start, which is
nice.
Yeah, and a bit of an advantage, but you can see the rest of the team is fairly weak. Goaltending is really questionable. A guy named Teddy Grew in the first season, I think his goals against average was somewhere over 8, and that was really the last season of Major League Hockey he ever played. Katarinac and La Rochelle, the other guys, don't really have any future ahead of them either. So we got to do something about goal, but there is an obvious option there that I'll take care of in a second. But other than that, forwards are pretty thin. Didier Pitre is, Hall of Famer, and pretty much at the height of his career here. Well, now he gets a little bit better than this. And Laviolette, the guy who's running the team, essentially, is the best defenseman. So we're looking fairly weak. Renfrew, this was kind of the team Ambrose O'Brien focused on, put most of his money into, and winds up with guys like the Patrick brothers, who go on to found the Pacific Coast League. Cyclone Taylor, who follows them out to Vancouver and wins
Great
the
name.
Stanley Cup there. Yep, one of the
Great name.
maybe the greatest player in early hockey history. And Bert Lindsay, who's the Hall of Famer himself and the father of Ted Lindsay, who plays with Gordie Howe on the Wings in the 50s. Father or grandfather? I can't remember.
I would think father, but
Yeah,
shouldn't he be tied to him if you click on him?
that is a good point. Although I don't think, because Lindsay hasn't appeared in the database yet in historical, I don't think it's going to show up.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I do
So,
see a goalie who can help us out right away.
yeah, that's the one I was talking about. Okay, so that's Renfrew. They've got a lot of money behind them. They've got imported some good players. We've got the Ottawa Senators. What happens with the ECHA is Ottawa is one of the ECHA teams. ECHA, after booting their best team out, the Wanderers, people stop going to the games. And the league is in huge financial trouble within just a few days or weeks of opening, and collapses very quickly. And at that point, in early 1910, a couple of the teams, Ottawa and the Montreal Shamrocks, come hat in hand to the NHA and say, "Hey, you no hard feelings over us kicking you out before, right? We come play in your league." And because these are pretty well established teams, they get let in. So the Ottawa is basically what's grown out of the old Ottawa Silver Seven team that dominated hockey in the around the turn of the century. And some of these guys are still there. Frank McGee, their best player, has retired by this point and would go on to be killed a few years later in World War One. But they've still got Percy Lasseur is probably the best goalie in hockey. Marty Walsh, Bruce Stewart, lots of Hall of Famers here. Very deep team, and they're going to be one of the better teams in the league this year. The Wanderers as
Now,
well. Go ahead.
hold on. Go back there for a second and go look at the Ottawa jerseys here.
Yeah,
Make sure people see that.
yeah. This is sort of a one-off for them. They normally had horizontal jerseys, but they went with the vertical stripes this year. It was a little different, but that will change. And the jerseys are changing pretty quick, like from year to year at this point. There's the Wanderers, still a very good team. If you had started games in 1917 in FHM 9 or earlier, they were kind of just at the end of their run. Their arena burnt down. They immediately went out of business a few games into the NHL season, the first NHL season. But here, they're still a strong team, arguably the best team in Montreal. And then more Hall of Famers, Pud Glass, and like I said this before, not enough families name their kids Pud anymore. Moose Johnson, another Hall of Famer, Riley Hearn. The Shamrocks, who were one of the team with Ottawa, come over after the league, after the ECHA falls apart. Joe Hall, who's the guy who dies in the Spanish flu epidemic in 1917 when Montreal goes to Seattle to play them for the Cup. Tommy Dunderdale, Australian-born guy who winds up in the Hall of Fame. Another great player. They're not quite as good as the Wanderers, but still a pretty solid team. Haleybury, one of the two northern teams that O'Brien brought in. And not quite as great a team right now. They do have Art Ross, who obviously the Art Ross Trophy is named after him, the longtime general manager of the Bruins, and a Hall of Fame player as well. So that's their big name, and decent goalie Patty Moran, and a little bit more depth than we've got. And finally, there is Cobalt, which is one of the weaker teams. They've got the three McNamara brothers on defense. George and Howard went on to be pretty well-known players. There's also their brother Hal, who didn't quite work out as much, but all of them are pretty young at this point. In fact, Howard McNamara is only 16. But among three big physical defensemen. And the other interesting guy here is Steve Vare. Let's see if I've got his picture here. Yeah. One of these great early hockey card sets, really colorful, and it's sort of inspires the card view, the early cards you see in the in FHM. There is probably the best player nobody's ever heard of. He was a top player in pro hockey. Problem is he moved around so much, and it was in the early years. He starts out in his hometown of Barrie, and is a good senior player there. Winds up going up to Northern Ontario, plays for Port Arthur in the Northern Ontario League. Port Arthur now being part of Thunder Bay. Then heads over to the Ottawa Valley League for a couple of years. Then to the Federal League, the one the O'Briens had their teams in. And in the previous season to this one, he's all over the place. He goes out west to play for one team in Alberta, the Strathcona Shamrocks, and then to Edmonton of the Western Canada Professional League. Then comes back, plays for the Wanderers, and I think that was all the teams he played for that last year. But one end of the country to the other. And
I was just gonna say, in the game, his real stats show him playing for Cobalt, Renfrew, the Toronto Tecumsehs, and the Toronto Ontarios.
Yep. So he goes to Cobalt this season, winds up going to Renfrew, then misses a season because of illness in 1911. Comes back, isn't quite as good. I mean, in the first couple of years of the NHA, he's one of the best players in the league. Comes back, he has a decent season for Toronto, but their team is, the team is struggling financially. They change the name the following season, but partway through the year, they need money, so they sell him to Halifax of the Maritime League. And at that point, that's the end of the 1913-14 season. Next year, the war starts. He joins up with the Army and is gone for a few years. Comes back, and that's the end of him as an active player. He doesn't play. I think he basically retired at 28. Comes back from the Army in 1919 and starts coaching in various leagues around Ontario. Winds up in Northern Ontario. Wins a Allen Cup, or actually two Allen Cups with Port Arthur. The National Senior Championship in the 20s, and then in the 30s he moves to Kirkland Lake. And Kirkland Lake was kind of from about the 50s through the 70s was really well known as producing like a ridiculous number of hockey players. The Plager brothers, Dick Duff, Bill Dernan, and for a small town, just a totally disproportionate number of great players. And Vare was one of the guys who was sort of set that up to say, was involved in the early years and got that infrastructure in and building up this great hockey program they had there. But the really interesting thing is
boiled egg 1974, and our OOTP chat says Kirkland Lake is my hometown.
Hey, there we go. Yeah, and Alan Thicke. Yep, not exactly a hockey player, but legendary Canadian. But the really interesting thing about Vare is, in the early 1960s, he's in some sort of an accident, and it amputates the R off his last name. And he becomes guitar legend Steve Vai, and goes on to play with Frank Zappa and David Lee Roth, and has a great solo career. You buying that?
No, not at all.
Could have happened. Okay.
I mean, if you would have aged him a bit, I'd be like, okay, maybe, but no.
Okay. So, no, not actually Steve Vai.
Yeah.
But anyhow, getting back to our game, I'm not playing as myself. That is my grandfather, who is approximately the right age to be running a team, although from what my dad said, he had absolutely no use for hockey, so wouldn't have done that. But anyhow. So what we need to do here is, find ourselves a goalie. Fortunately...
Well, there's one very obvious candidate.
And he meets our requirements, Georges Vezina, who is playing in Chicoutimi this year. What actually happens in real life is Montreal plays a exhibition game against the Chicoutimi senior team with Vezina in goal. Vezina shuts them out, and they think, okay, well, this guy is way better than anything we've got. So obviously, I am going to
Sign him to a deal.
sign him to a deal. I'm going to bump the contract offer up from the baseline demand to just to make absolutely sure we get him.
Now, a question that just popped up in the chat, or
Yep.
popped up in the chat earlier, but didn't get. Is there any way to remove the helmets from the guys, Jeff?
Not right now. It's actually a thing with it's a problem with face gen. The hair, at least in the version of face gen we're using, looks really goofy if you take the helmets off.
Although I guess we
So
could
we've
switch to hats.
yeah, you could put ball caps on the guys. If I guess we could figure out a way to do that, but no,
Is
it's,
that not an
I know
option?
at some point I think we got to do something with face gen at some point. It's starting to look really dated, so I'm going to
It,
work on the
no,
guys and see if we can.
I thought there was an option for us to do that right now, like switch them. Yeah, use caps on players.
Oh
We
yeah,
could.
that's in the startup options. So, or is that in?
No startup options. Well, it might be in here too. I'm not sure. He
No,
says
it's
as
in
he
the
looks.
startup options. I'll get that next time. Maybe we'll do it that way
Well,
for
then
these first few
does it take
games.
it off for the goalies too? I guess goalies weren't wearing masks anyway,
No, the
so it
goalies.
doesn't
So
matter.
I think no, I think it gives. I think it gives caps for the goalies too. That's an idea. Yeah, I'll change it to next time. But anyhow, we put in our offer for Vezina, and see if I can grab a few other guys. What I'll do is use the state filter, and the trick here is Quebec's got because the accent on the E bumps it to the end of the list. Instead of hitting Q to jump to the Q list, hit R and it bumps you one above that, and then you can get to Quebec really easily. So, yeah, Vezina obviously the best potential guy there. And okay, we're hmm, getting a lot of Anglo guys here. I will take Alphonse Jeté, definitely a French guy. Trying to stick with the whole French Canadian theme of the team, but I will also take Fred Strike, who's playing. There's a really good league in Montreal at this time called I think it was the Montreal Manufacturers League, which sounds like a beer league, but
It
it's
does.
actually one of the top amateur leagues in the country at this point because it's a league where the local companies are bringing in hockey players and giving them dubious jobs just to get them in the company to build up the company team. And Strike is
Fair
one of the
enough.
better players in that league. And
Now,
she, you know,
sorry, I was just
shit.
gonna say one of the another question that had come in was, um, and I've seen somebody post this on the forums too, I guess, so we can answer it now. Do you need to have, or how big is your roster for this in this right now? We can only have 25 guys under contract, but how many
It's
players do we need on our roster?
we need 14 right now dressed. I've got exactly 14, so I've got to sign a few guys here. So I made that one to Strike and the other guy. And oh yeah, back filter. Now, I need defensemen particularly, and actually, if we're signing Vezina, we should sign his brother Pierre as well, even though he's not very good.
Okay, I kind of like just because of his name, Ed Longfellow, even though he's clearly English.
Any other French
Okay.
guys? Lorenzo Bertrand. And I think most of these guys I'm grabbing will actually be from that manufacturers league. Not seeing a lot of other. Is that no? That's not Joe Malone. That's Jeff Malone.
Oh, do you know what, Jeff? I had no idea the nickname for George Vezina.
This could be Cucumber, because he was
Yes,
cool as a cucumber.
apparently.
Cucumbers are apparently known for being cool. Okay, let's advance that because we got a long way to go until the regular season actually starts. And I think we'll get most of these guys. Strike signs, Bertrand signs, Jeté signs.
Oh, AJ Duelist. Masks weren't introduced until like 1940. Clint Benedict wore the first mask in the 30s. I want to say 37,
Yeah, it was
but he
sort of
only wore it for a
this weird
period.
leather face type of mask.
Well, it literally was above his eyebrows, over his nose,
Yeah, like a T
and then
shape.
like kind of over his mouth. because he broke his nose. He wore it for one period, then threw it in the garbage, and then nobody wore it again until Jacques Plante did. Yeah,
There we go. We got our big contract here. Georges Vezina is signed with us.
excellent.
So let's see. McDonald wants 10. He can have
D-
12. I'm going to give
Dynamic.
Vezina number one, even though that belongs to our former starter, Grew.
That sounds fair. Dynamic MLB says, don't know if it's exclusive to baseball, but is live option start in FHM?
No, that's they actually pay a ton of money for that to get the live updated rosters in out of the park. And the reason it works for them is because most of their ratings can be derived directly from stats. You can't really do that with hockey. So it would be prohibitively expensive for us to get that, even if such a service exists. And B, it really wouldn't work that well for the ratings. So we just what we do is update them regularly through the year. And every time we do a new game update, there's usually new data in it. Like the one we just did, we just added the current rosters for as of about a week and a half ago, and we'll update that again shortly before Christmas. So you'll get regularly updated rosters, just not the same way.
A few more questions from the chat here. We have, and again, I can answer some of these while you continue to go here. AJ Dula
I'm up to
says,
21 players, so I think I'm good for the season.
That's it.
Good.
AJ Dulis in our FHM chat says, when was the salary cap implemented? That came in after the lockout of 04-05, so 2005
Yeah.
was the first salary cap year. In terms of players getting $1 million, the first $1 million contract was signed by Bobby Hall for the Winnipeg Jets, signed a 10-year deal for $1 million.
Which isn't really $1 million contract as we define it now. It would be that's
Yeah.
$1 million a season.
After that, who actually got paid $1 million? That's a question I actually don't know the answer to off the top of my head.
I think it would have been Gretzky.
Well, Gretzky had his personal services contract.
Yeah, that's well counting that.
And then when he did sign his big contract, it was a 25-year contract. Technically.
Yeah, I remember the picture of it.
So I don't know if that counts either.
Him signing it. Okay. So new players are in, and I'm just going to continue on with this. So that's going to be pretty much my roster. Oh, okay. Then we got a trading book wheel. I've still got the debug code on that. Ignore the fact that it's describing the trade type. But Montreal Wanderers, there's swap goalies there. And it's trading. I was going to do the trading. And it feels like cheating. The game will generate 5 assistant coaches, which is really unrealistic for the period. So I'm not going to hire more staff, just because it feels a little bit unrealistic there.
Connor McDavid's next contract is going to be insane, Max Ducat says. Yes, I just wonder who he's going to get it from.
Although now that I look at it, we got...
because it really doesn't seem like it's going to be the Oilers.
Don't say that too loud. You're going to upset them. No, the skills look okay. Okay, our training is not going to be great for the first few years, but...
AJ Dulis, in a completely unrelated question, is there a way to manually edit a player to be completely toxic so nobody wants to sign them? I wonder who he could possibly be referring to.
There's a few that would fit that. Actually, we're going to see a little bit of this because I've added Newsy Lalonde to the team, and Lalonde was not to put too fine a point on it. Lalonde was kind of an asshole. He was the season before this. He was.
Whoa, Jeff! We're trying to keep this kid friendly.
Yeah.
He was not a very
Lalonde
nice
was not
man.
kid friendly. Yeah, he was arrested the previous year for beating up a goal judge, which seems a little bit on the extreme side. I mean.
Yeah.
So, and he's put it this way, Lalonde will be a very good illustration of the team harmony system, I think. So I'm just going to quickly set up the attributes. Obviously, I'm going to focus on the guys who have some potential and are relatively young. So we're going to have problems with Lalonde. I pretty much guarantee that.
So what you're saying is we should make a random debut game where we have Newsy Lalonde, Matt Cook. Um,
Oh, see, now you're just calling guys out by name. That's great.
well, no, I mean, well, Matt Cook was not a very well liked player by a lot of people who didn't play with him. And then who was our guy in our last year's stream who was causing so much problem for Detroit? Whose name I'm suddenly Sean Avery.
Sean Avery.
Add Sean Avery to that
Everybody loves
team.
Sean Avery.
Oh yeah, you
Okay.
remember how everybody on his team hated him?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep the expenses down to start this off because we're not actually going to start playing games until the new year. They didn't get the league going until after until 1910 it started. So it's in some places you'll actually see this referred to as the 1910 season instead of the 09-010 or the 09-10 season, which is what we've got it here. And this would be the new tournament assignment screen for scouts, but just not a lot of tournaments and historical for them to be watching. And okay, great. Okay, when Poulin, one of our better players, hurt his back helping a friend move, but fortunately he has months to recover. Another trade, and you can see there are good free agents out there. They'll probably get grabbed relatively soon. Okay, Strike, the guy we just signed, is already starting to decline. That's not great. Monthly budget, I'll keep dumping the scouting
Boiled egg
support
just
up.
tossing guys under the bus. I think you could pick some more better defensemen than that for
Yeah,
all time hated.
well, oh, I thought you were talking about my roster.
No, no, he says Ulf Samuelson and Darius Kasparidis on defense.
Okay, Poulin is close, and I think the way I'm going to play this is just continue from one game to another. But I may also do like sim ahead a month at a time. It's not going to be that noticeable at this point because there's only a dozen games in the season. Another development report, monthly budget still good. And we're almost into December 31st and we'll get our first player poll even though we haven't actually started playing games yet. So Lalonde, best skater, Didier Petre from us, also the fastest. Jack Laviolette, most underrated, and George Vezina already has the best reputation of any goalie in the league. He was a little slow to take off, but I think he'll be doing better than the guys we actually had in real life this season. So I'm hoping we do better than 2-10. Okay, time to set the captains. I think that pretty much has to be Laviolette. I got Keterenich, but he's probably not going to be on the roster. He's kind of the third string goalie. So Laviolette is the captain. I'll take a chance and give Lalonde the A. And I guess Peter Poulin. Poulin has higher. Oh, that's bravery. That's no, he's got higher determination. So I'll make him the other alternate, and also because Skinner is a cool name. Oh, and we're actually at the first game now, so I will quickly let the AI set the roles, see if we get anything odd. And I can only dress 14 players here, so really in this era, teams wouldn't be dressing a backup goalie. Let's send La Rochelle down right away. And I've got 4 defensemen, but one of the things you'll notice with players on these teams, if I scroll through the tooltips here, you'll see a lot of guys with a second position. Actually, there's only a couple here. Miller. Is there another one? No, apparently not. But I will put Miller back to left defense since he can play that as well. And there'll be a lot of guys who can play either forward or defense.
Yeah, a question from Max Duquette, Jeff. He says, "Is there going to be rosters updated for the exhibition mode this year? Because last year it was only from the defaults."
Oh, was it from the opening night? I'll put that on a list. I think we can do that without too much trouble. And you get basically two full lines and a couple of spare forwards. And that's 12, and I need two more here. Strike the guy we just signed.
AJ Doolittle
And
asking,
Leduc is
is there a
slightly
proper
new.
way to do a monthly budget so you don't end up going into the red?
Well, try to keep it as low as possible during the off season so you can build up a little money, and or at least don't waste money when it's not really necessary. And then it really depends on what kind of how close you are to the bottom line.
One
Sometimes
of
you
the
have to
things
cut
is,
costs.
well, yeah, the NHL really has been for a very long time a gate-driven league. It's slowly starting to change
Now it's
now, but
well, particularly when you got one team playing in an arena that seats what is it, 4,700. Gate can't be too important to them. And I've got two perimeter shooters on the first line, so I'm going to change Petra to something else, I think. Or actually, no, I think I'm going to go with something different for Lalonde. Just because I
the
don't
cap
want
is
two guys with similar roles. Oh, actually, no, that's his best by a couple of points. Not good. Have to
the
go with
cap is
Petra.
projected to go up, but there's a lot of teams who are struggling to maintain seat sales. And I mean,
Yeah.
again, Winnipeg. I was just for example, Winnipeg is not selling out. Because well, costs are rising for everything. Everybody's dealing with issues. But I mean, like, I just took a quick peek at what tickets were going to be for Saturday with Connor Bedard coming to town.
How
Guess
much?
what ticket prices are?
Uh, Low end 200s.
I'm just going to pull it up here so I don't get it wrong.
I can't remember what the bottom seat in Winnipeg is right now.
Well, I got my mini pack about $200 a seat, a little over $200 a seat, and I'm a couple of rows off the
Yeah,
ice.
so 50% off of
Cheapest
that.
cheapest in the upper deck is $94,
That's not terrible.
$95 plus tax.
And I'm just going to say here that I'm going to choose tactics here that are kind of era appropriate. Won't get too fancy if I can avoid it, as long as they're still relatively.
But if I want lower bowl,
Relatively accurate for what I'm
$262
for the team.
starting. $262. Second level, you get maybe 227.
So I'm trying to pick things that are relatively good for us, fairly simple strategies that would have been sort of semi-accurate. I've been thinking about taking like restricting strategies by era. Don't know how well that would go over though. And I guess there's also the question of were things used in other eras just by not necessarily the same name. Not a lot of
That's a lot of it.
power play opportunities, but at least Lalonde fits great for that, so we'll set him up.
No, I said it's tough for people. I said I have my mini pack bought, but I said I was looking at that. I can't justify spending $500 for a Saturday afternoon hockey game right now.
Ouch. Yeah. Okay, so there's
Well, for
our lineup and everything set. I think we may have a bug still with the engine in this era. So I had a crash when I was testing this the other day. So I'm going to save before just on the off chance that something dies on us. But otherwise, we're going to jump through these pretty quickly. And we get crushed 11-2 by the much better Wanderers team at our first exhibition game. And season tickets are announced. At least we're doing pretty well as far as that goes. The small arenas up north don't get that much. And Montreal, the Shamrocks, who are basically the third team in Montreal at this point, despite being fairly successful in the ECHA, are not selling well. So they actually die out after this season. So they won't be around very long. And we've got somebody injured already. Strike, the new guy, strained thigh muscle. So we can just swap him in for Bougie, it looks like. And Cobalt, one of the Northern Ontario teams. And we come up with a 9-2 win, so maybe they're a little weaker and we can beat them. Just need 3 wins to beat the historical record. And Haleybury, the other Northern team, we lose 7-5 to them. So I think basically we're going to be competitive with these guys, but I wouldn't expect to dominate them. And don't have to worry about losing anybody to waivers. And we got somebody else injured again. Oh, great. Now it's Peter, one of our better players. Strike is still day to day. Oh, Peter just has the flu, so not a big deal. Reminds me, I made some adjustments to. We're going to trim the roster down a bit too once we start the regular season. That'll be in a couple of days. I made some adjustments to the injury data and just trying to get some things that should be minor injuries downgraded a little bit, but some things are still putting players out that probably shouldn't. I've got to take another look at that. And maybe the injury system, just how it handles those minor injuries, and a 7-2 loss to Cobalt again. So, not a great preseason. But the goal here is basically, don't go 2-10 in the opening season and try to win a cup, at least one cup in the NHA. The first one, I think, for Montreal happened in 1916. Season preview. Oh, they're actually calling us cup favorites, which is very optimistic. I wouldn't believe that. Oh, the training camp development report comes through finally at the end of training camp. Pretty good. Vezina is up to 3 stars. Rochelle Young goalie has turned 18 and has gotten a few improvements. Katarinic and okay, 2 goalies we don't really care about are going downhill. Strike, the new guy, seems to be declining pretty quickly. And now we have to trim this roster down. But the problem is these guys are both day-to-day. So Chaplot is going to have to go down. Katarinic, the 3rd-string goalie. I got to get this down to 17, so one more guy. I don't want to go without a defenseman there, so I'm going to send Seguin down. And we'll play. Actually, we got a few days, so they may be recovered by the time we get to the first game. And Lalonde gets hurt. Bruised kidney, 2 to 3 weeks. Just what you want at the start of your first season. Your best player goes down. So Strike will actually get first line time now. And hoping Petra recovers from the flu. He says he's ahead of schedule. That's a good sign. Malone possibly healthy as well. Petra almost. Okay, so we're going up north Ottawa to Renfrew to play the first game, and everybody is healthy except for Lalonde. So let's see how we do. First game in Montreal Canadiens history against the Renfrew Creamery Kings. Yeah, that's not a good start. 9-2 loss to Renfrew. Jack Miller and Renfrew getting 4 points. Our first goal is scored by Skinner Poulin. And the other one is by Jack Laviolette, but by that time the game is basically over. It was 8-1, he makes it 8-2. And I think I need to adjust the goalies for this era too, because there's so many goalies getting goals being scored. The goalie shouldn't be called as quickly. And there we go. The media is already on. As Montreal media is the first taste, but that's going to be one thing we get a lot of with this game. You're going to be seeing plenty of the new media options.
All right, Jeff, I'm just going to point out here. Crime in the Wood says, "This is amazing. I live in Renfrew."
Well, congratulations. Your team won. You get them for 2 more seasons before the O'Briens decide they're tired of losing money and move on. Okay. Well, I'm going to defend them, but say there's room for improvement because there definitely is. Oops. Move the screen a little bit there, and now we got injuries. Poulin is food poisoning day to day, which I suppose is a legitimate concern in 1910.
It still is these days.
Now, that doesn't happen quite
Question.
as often. We have, laws and stuff to prevent that.
Yeah, it still happens. AJ Doulos in the chat says, Winter Classic jerseys, win or loss for both teams?
Say again?
The Winter Classic jerseys, win or loss for Vegas and Seattle?
The Seattle one looks a little weird. I know what they were going for, but the colors don't look right. Vegas is fine, no?
I wish Seattle would have just used like the S it was supposed to instead of trying to force the newer S on it.
Yeah, that's
But I
part of it.
don't mind it. I don't mind it. The Vegas one I don't like.
And we go into
It
Ottawa and lose 9-6. Ken Mullen 3 point or three a hat trick. We actually were up 3-2 after the first, and then just couldn't hold it together.
now
We really need to get
Vegas
Lalonde back here.
the Vegas one, I think they should have went two ways. They should have either went back and did one that was on the Bandits, or they should have went like full Vegas and did like a very ECHL thing and did like full on tuxedos and pretended to be the Rat Pack, which
Okay,
would have been amazing.
like a little,
Amazing jerseys.
get
I
a
would
little,
have
little
bought one of those,
like headshots of
even
Sammy
though I
Davis
hate
Jr.
Vegas.
and Dean Martin on their shoulders.
Well, whatever. That would be just hilarious. I would 100% would have bought that jersey if they would have done like full on tuxedo.
Okay, so we
I
get
would have bought a
Ottawa
Mark Stone.
again, and I'm going to start Vezina every
Does
game.
All right, Jeff? Another question from AJ Duos: Can a flu, somebody be affected by a flu on the team, infect everybody else?
No, it does. I'd like to do that, but it's a little difficult with the way the injury code works right now.
I also wanted us to put in the 1919 year Stanley Cup final could get canceled.
Can't get canceled, but there is actually a special event that will make players sick with the flu in that one. Should probably update to that to like 2020, shouldn't
Probably.
I? Okay, so we lost again to Ottawa. We are at our monthly budget, so I can at least make the players happier now. Don't have to. Scouting would still be a little expensive at this point. Okay, we are in Montreal against the Shamrocks, the one of the two English Canadian teams in Montreal, who will be gone after this season, but maybe this is a chance to get our first win now. And it is. There we go. Our first win, 6-3 against the Montreal Shamrocks.
Huzzah.
And game-winning goal, Fred Strike gets the first one. McDonald, Bougie gets the first game-winning goal. And Pierre Vezina, actually, Georges Vezina's brother, I just put in because somebody else was slightly injured, has 2 goals already. And it looks like Cyclone Taylor is leading the league, not surprisingly. So I'm actually going to swap Miller out for Malone because Malone was the guy that I had removed Vezina for. But if Vezina is scoring, we'll leave him in there. 3 points in 3 games. Not going to complain about that. Oh, and I forgot to put Poulin back in for Bertrand. So we were a little under strength there. Haleybury, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly just because we've got 114 years of history to cover, and we get another win. Joseph Bougie is playing really well for us, 7-4 over Haleybury. That's our first home win, I think.
Yes. Well, this says, look at these goals against averages stats. Oof.
Yep, I mean, the Montreal's goalie, I think I said, was in the first season, their goals against average was 8 something. And even in the first few seasons of Vezina, he's in the 5s and 6s. That's just how high the scoring was at this point. Calms down fairly quickly, but oh, there we go. Lalonde's kidney is apparently improved. And is he? Oh, he's even able to play. Okay, so Strike gets replaced with Lalonde. And Bougie, even though he's playing well, I'm going to replace with Strike. Does that put... Yeah, Strike goes to the... Actually, I'm going to put Strike on the second line. And can we get to 5? This would actually, if we get this, this is better than the real team did in the first season. But this is against the Wanderers, the best team in town. And we come up with an 5-3 upset win. Jeff Malone back into the lineup gets 3 points. So doing much
All right,
better than
Max, thanks for
expected
coming
here.
out.
I'm not going to do anything at the trade deadline. Just because we're doing reasonably well. And actually, I'm going to...
AJ Doolittle for a question for me.
Nobody interesting on the trade deadline or trade block. What was the question?
He says, how about how Lambert has shown out since he got drafted? Think he has elite upside myself. How about your take on him? I was always high on him
Yep.
before the draft. I thought he was kind of out of his element, playing in the Finnish Elite League in his draft year. When he came back to junior, he played with the Moose. He played okay. In junior, he played really well. And I watched him in the WHL Championship against the Winnipeg Ice at the time, now Wenatchee, and I was impressed by his skill. I think as he grows, he very much has capability of being a easy top 6 guy. Whether he can be that consistent guy, I don't know if that'll be the case or not. I hope so. But I could very much see him being kind of just because he was recently traded, Anthony Bolivier, just kind of like a guy who can move up and down the lineup.
Don't mention that. Can't believe you retained salary on that.
Yeah, I can't believe you retained salary on that either. That's just crazy.
Okay, so we're back under 500, by the way. But playing Cobalt, who's actually off to a great start and is now undefeated, 6-0. They didn't look like that good of a team going into the season, but seem to be beating up everybody here, including us. And we're now 5-3. We've got Haleybury here. No injuries, at least. And Lalonde has actually been quiet this year. When I played test games, every time I would get a bunch of off-ice incidents from him. He hasn't had a single one yet. I'm surprised. And speaking of Lalonde, hat trick or 3 points there, as we beat up on Haleybury. So we
AJ
are
Doolittle,
double our historical win total in this season so far.
yeah, some of it's not just freeing up the 4 million. It's they can start accruing more cap space now too by having that cap room. Which means as the trade deadline gets closer, they can build that. Every day they accrue more space so they can take a bigger player. I think at some point they will re-sign Ethan Bear.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a given. I think he's definitely, as soon as he's ready to go.
But he's not going to sign for a huge amount of money either. They'll probably get him close to league minimum.
Yep.
On a 1-year deal.
But yeah, all signs are he wants to come back to Vancouver.
Well, why wouldn't he, especially with how well the team's playing?
Yeah. So we got Cobalt, who the Cobalt's finally lost a couple of games, but beat us here in overtime, 5-4. What is Vezina's? Haven't really looked. Well, I'm almost at the end of the season, so I might as well let this play out. I think we've kind of beat our goals for the. Actually, I wonder what the job security. Oh, job security was top goal in the season goal was top third of the league, so I don't think we're going to make that.
So you think you might get fired already before the first season's over?
It's fairly unlikely. 9-3 win over the Wanderers, so we've beaten up our main rivals a couple of times. That's good news. And Lalonde had a 5-point game, and finally, I think this is the Shamrocks again. Yeah. So do we go back to back against the other two Montreal teams? We do. 10-8 win, and we finished 500 for the season. Wow, Fred Strike, 5-goal game. Never really had. I think he played for one of the Toronto teams in the NHA briefly, but never really had a big pro career. But 5 goal game here. And that is how the season ends. So Ottawa, there's no playoffs. There was no playoffs in the league this year. So Ottawa is the 1910 NHA champions just by virtue of winning out in the regular season. Looks like they managed to push past. Cobalt lost one more towards the end of the season, so that cost them the title. Tommy Smith of Montreal is the point leader, although we've got 4 or 5 Ottawa guys right behind him. And Taylor's down there as well. None of our guys made it into the top. Although Vezina's, I mean, that looks like a bad goals against average. But do I have the NHA? Yeah, okay, so it's better than I thought the first couple of years. But you can see he's in the high threes there, high mid threes. Doesn't really get down to the low threes until we're a few years into the league. But that's still about 2 goals per game better than the actual total. And I will just quickly look at the new stats screen.
Just while you're doing that, AJ Dulos says, how prominent were agents back in the early days of hockey, or did they even exist? They would have lawyers probably for contract stuff, but really agents
Yeah,
didn't really exist
and it was
till
a lot of it
Bobby
had to be
Orr.
done sort of under the table because there were leagues, particularly some of the American ones, who were technically amateur leagues, but would be giving guys no-show jobs where they show up and get proper salary for going down and playing. So yeah, there wasn't really any actual agent. I'm not even sure how much lawyers would be involved to that extent. I think it was mostly just the team makes the guy a contract
Yeah.
offer and you sign it or you don't.
Well, I mean, somebody had to write that contract to begin with, I would imagine,
Yeah,
who
true enough,
probably
but
had
probably
some.
the team's lawyer.
Yeah. But
But
I mean, like, it was it Alan Eagleson was kind of like the first one? Am I wrong? Like, it was Bobby Orr, I think, kind of
basically,
was.
yeah, yeah. Well, it wasn't just Orr; he was doing stuff with Carl Brewer as well, and but
Orr was
that
the first big name, though,
yeah,
I think, kind
the
of.
whole Eagleson situation turned out not so great. So that's something the NHLPA likes to talk about now. But so there's our player stats for the first season. Alonda, losing him for nearly half the season, which was all of 5 games, really killed us. We probably maybe wouldn't have been the top team in the league, but I think we could have made a decent run to top 2 or 3. Oh wait, did we finish 3? Fourth. Strike and McDonald, 2 of the guys we signed, actually turned out really well. Although Strike has been declining in his ratings all through the year, so I think this will be the best we ever get out of him. We might be smart to maybe try and move him in the off season. Laviolette, our captain and probably the best known player on the team. Good defensive player, good defenseman, so he's productive. Petra, that's pretty disappointing out of him. Same with Poulin, although Poulin was hurt for 3 games. And Vesna's brother, surprisingly, we never really did anything in real life, or at least at the top level. But other than that, let's see, Gru gets into 2 games. Yeah, that's only slightly worse than 9.13 goals against average, which is only slightly worse than what he actually had this year. And George Vezina, 5.45 goals against average in the season that he spent in Chicoutimi in real life. So enjoy those beautiful blue uniforms. That is the last you'll see of them. Next year we'll be into the
I
red.
mean, that's not. Didn't they wear them as throwbacks back?
Oh, they did, yeah, like 2009. Didn't they have them for,
Well, I think for the 100 years, yeah, that'd
yeah,
be
the
right.
100-year season? Although they
Yeah.
celebrated that in the wrong year. They did that in 2008 and 8 and 9. But that is the season for Montreal. We'll get our guys healthy again. Do I have a few contracts? I guess I'll re-sign Gru because he's willing to do it, and I do technically need a backup. Laviolette, our captain, absolutely has to get re-signed, and he's happy with that. I mean, at this point, salaries aren't really a big concern. We've got enough money to pay them. Miller, do I maybe let him go? He had a good season, but it's still half star. Bougie played well for us, so despite not having great ratings, I think I'll keep him, even if it's only as a minor leaguer. Dekari, okay, good enough. Petra, definitely want him back. And yeah, Bernier as well. I think there's probably some in there.
Okay, checking the unofficial NHL uniforms. They say the Canadiens celebrated their 100th anniversary over the course of 2 seasons, in which they would wear replicas of 5 uniforms from the early eras of team history. In 08-09 season, they wore throwback to 45-46, 15-16, and 1912-13. They would carry over the 1912-13 uniform for a game in 09-010 that would be joined by their 10-11 and their inaugural 1909-1910 uniforms.
Okay, so we got the awards this year. We don't not getting the awards ceremony for some reason. I got to check on that. But we won basically nothing. The Renfrew general manager got GM of the year. Coach of the year was Haley Burry's coach. Tommy Smith of Montreal Wanderers is the top scorer. Marty Walsh of the Senators, the MVP. And Percy Lasseur, also of the Senators, best goalie. So maybe Vezina has a shot at that next season. But I'm just advancing here. I think we've gone a little bit over time, although we did have a late start, I guess. So I'm just going to, time to cut my budget back a little bit and try to build up some funds over the off season. Money is still pretty tight for the Canadiens at this point. As you saw, I mentioned at the start, Lavande was sold off to Renfrew in real life partway through the season. But I think, do you want to wind up there, Adam?
Sure. With that, thank you very much for tuning in to another franchise Hockey Manager stream. We typically stream every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/franchise hockey manager, as well as twitch.tv/OOTP developments. All of our streams are archived on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/OOTP developments as well. You can also find us, or sorry, I guess all of our streams are archived on our YouTube channel, and they go live on Sundays at about 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, mostly for our European viewers. You can also reach out to us on our Facebook page. No, I said that already. Getting lost. No. Yeah, there we go. You can reach out to us on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/franchise hockey manager. On Twitter, while it still exists, we're at franchise hockey. You can find us on a variety of other social media platforms. And come on down to our official website, which is ootpdevelopments.com. Click on the community button in the top right-hand corner to bring you to official forums. We can come talk about franchise hockey manager, out of park baseball, perfect team go, or anything else you wish to discuss. Jeff, did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. I'm just advancing us to the next day, the first day of the 1910-11 season. And you can see goodbye to that old blue C uniform. And this is now we're the official team of the Canadian Athletic Club. So I think that is their logo, and we're wearing red for good now. Just not quite the Canadiens jerseys that you're familiar with, the big green logo. Instead, but I think we've set up pretty well for this year, and I did set this game up with the draft option on. There wasn't really a draft in these years, but I think it's the best way to handle this. Makes it a little more interesting as we're building the team, instead of just signing free agents or having the players appear automatically, which would be the other option. But we'll go with that, and I think I'll stick with that rule of only drafting French Canadian guys, or Quebec guys at least, for a few years. But I think we're going pretty good here. So I guess we'll be back. Adam will be back next week. I'm not going to be here next Wednesday, but we'll be back. Adam will have his game with. Who are you playing? Penguins.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
sorry.
Yeah.
Blanked out
Yeah,
for a
no,
second.
you had me just drawing a blank there for a minute.
Pittsburgh with his Modern Penguins game next Wednesday, and then I'll be back with this game again the Wednesday after that. And I think I'm going to try to get at least a couple of seasons in. I'll go a little bit faster than I did this time. I won't have to, I won't go through the history quite as much. and yeah, well, I won't need to do quite as much lineup setup and other things. So we'll move along a little faster next season. But let's see if we can get that. The Stanley Cups in the playoff with the Western League won't start until 1914. So we're gonna see if we can get a championship in before that, but it won't really be for the cup until a few more years, and we start playing that West East tournament. So thanks for coming out, and we will see you. Well, you'll see Adam in a week from now, and me in a couple of weeks.